So I'm Mary Gwen Wheeler with 55,000 Degrees, and we are just delighted to be partnering to help host this summit. Today you've heard a lot about what AI is. That was very helpful to me. How it will affect the future of work and jobs, what businesses can be doing about it and what they are doing about it. And now it is really the time to think about what education and partnerships with business can help us prepare for this as well. Just came from the education breakout session where we were talking about how all levels of education can adapt to the needs of this rapidly changing workforce. We also know that our education leaders have been discussing how to prepare students for tomorrow's technology. How can we build a future that harnesses this technology and that is more equitable? And that, as Dan Burke said earlier from UPS, that instead of having to choose between a dystopian or a utopian prediction, how do we better navigate the pace of change? So the song that I came up to here for listening to was, don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Yesterday's gone. But actually, in some ways, this is a bit of a repeat for us. It was about 10 years ago when 55,000 Degrees got started. And we came together because it was after the recession, and there were people out of jobs, and the jobs that were coming back required much higher skill levels. And we decided as a group to come together, leaders, to put a stake in the ground and say we need more college-educated people in this town, people that had degrees, had credentials, that were going to prepare them for this future, and those jobs that now required that. We had a common goal, 55,000 more degrees, 50% of our population with an associate's degree or higher. We agreed to share data and came together annually to talk about progress. That's how this summit got started. And 5 years ago, we joined forces with Kentuckiana Works to say it's got to be about, and GLI and the Greater Louisville Project, it's got to be about earnings and jobs as well. And we got very intentional about focusing on who's doing what. So where are we now? We've added 45,000 more college-educated people to our population. And we've increased that attainment by 7 percentage points. So it's a huge increase. But we're now at another inflection point. And we have to pick up the pace again. So I can't think of anybody better to turn to than Neeli Bendapudi when we talk about picking up the pace. She has just been a great addition to our community at the helm now of our anchor institution. The University of Louisville has got to be what all breakout cities have, that anchor institution that drives research, offers educational opportunities to a diverse set of students from all backgrounds. I'm delighted to have her here talking, and she will join us on stage here in a minute and interview a partner that she has brought on board, IBM. And let me just tell you a little bit about the conversation they're going to have. They're going to talk about the importance of bridging the digital divide and closing the skills gaps around technology, and put that in context of a new center, new partnership that IBM and U of L have created, starting with a skills academy and much more. They'll be talking about things like the vision of the partnership, the types of skills we need to be teaching, how education systems are rapidly adapting, and how do we grow adequate representation from women and people of color in the technology space. So just a little bit about, you all know Neeli already, because she insists that you call her Neeli, but her full name is Dr. Neeli Bendapudi. We got her here from Kansas, University of Kansas, where she was provost and executive vice chancellor, had also been at Ohio State, but she specializes in the study. She comes from a marketing and business background. She specializes in the study of consumer behavior. What better background for understanding the power and potential of AI. She'll be talking with Jonathan Arneault, who's director of IBM's North American Software Service as a center. It's the center of excellence and the go-to market transformation. And he has so much in his background around mission as well, which was really interesting to me. Things like aiding youth in sub-Saharan Africa through the Lucas Scholarship Foundation. He's director of another charitable trust, and he's a pastor. So without further ado, let me invite both Neeli and Jonathan Arneault up to the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I hope you've all had a super productive day. It's not every day that we have the time, right, to get away from our day-to-day and have a moment to hear what's happening around the world and hopefully think about how does it impact what we do every day. So Jonathan and I will try to make sure that these words as we wrap up are hopefully ideas that you can learn from, ideas that might inspire you, and mostly we are hoping that you will engage in this by asking questions.
Absolutely.
So this is how we thought we would set it up. And yes, I was asked what my favorite song would be, and Michael, does it come as any surprise to you, sir, that I picked the Cardinal Fight song, right? So that's my favorite song. What I thought I would do for any good conversation, I would lay out a context. I'll take just a very few minutes to talk to you about the University of Louisville. And then I'll turn it over and we'll start asking Jonathan questions about what he sees and why we've developed this partnership and what would come of it. So to put it in context, and why is that important, whether we talk about AI, whether we talk about changing workforce needs, whether we talk about the skill gap, as Mary Gwen pointed out, it always has to be rooted within a particular context. What are our needs? What is it we are trying to accomplish? Because everybody is unique. Every region is unique in both the strengths and weaknesses that it possesses. So I want you to remember a few things about the University of Louisville and why this partnership with IBM is so critical to us and so precious to us, truly. Across the whole country, I won't put you on the spot, I won't make you call it out. Everybody guess how many colleges and universities there are across the entire United States. Ready? You've got a number in your mind? Good. The number that I will share with you, I'm curious to see if the number I give you is higher or lower than what you thought. There are about 4,500 colleges and universities across this country. And many of you, the reason I used the Cardinal Fight song also was to tell you that many of you are familiar with how athletics is ranked and reported, like we say D1 sports, D2, that's something everybody is familiar with. What you may not be familiar with is that for universities, in terms of the research that's produced, they're also ranked. So it's kind of boring, but they're called R1, R2, right? Very creative.
Yeah.
I want to tell you, of the 4,500 or so colleges and universities, there are only 130. Remember this number, I will quiz you. I am a teacher. There are 130 universities. That's it. That are ranked as R1 or the highest level of research. And we are very, very fortunate that the University of Louisville is an R1 university. Candidly, that matters when we talk about partnerships like this. There's a couple more things I want you to know. Of those universities, what truly distinguishes the University of Louisville and what drew us here, my husband and me, to the University of Louisville, is that with that research mission, we serve an enormous number of students, percentage of students who are first generation, low income. I'm going to focus on the low income first. We have 40% of our students are eligible for Pell Grants. So that's like free, reduced lunch, lowest income levels. That is significantly higher than the remaining R1 universities. So for example, at the University of Kentucky, it's 20%. That's high, but think of 40%. And you heard where I came from, Ohio State, it's about 7% of their students are Pell Grant eligible. So it truly seemed like an incredible opportunity for University of Louisville. It also shows why we need these partnerships so much and why we're grateful to GLI and others for saying that industry, public-private partnership with academe is so important. So given our foundation of wanting to preserve that Research One foundation, great legacy, and balance the fact that we have 40% of our students on Pell Grant, there's one more number, and then we'll switch to Jonathan. The other thing about the University of Louisville that's unique and very, very valuable, we are not a research university where our faculty and staff and students are content to sit in an ivory tower. Ivory towers are lonely and boring places. Our people are out in the community. We pride ourselves on translating what happens, the bench side to the bedside, or whether you want to say in the lab to the marketplace. That's something we do. And it's not just us claiming it, right? Anybody can say it. I want you to know that even on community engagement, universities are ranked. But if you did a Venn diagram, you said, what are the top research universities? What are the top community engaged universities? Your University of Louisville. It's okay if you went to a different university. As long as you're here, I believe in the redemption of souls. That's okay. But if you live in Louisville, if you live in the Commonwealth, it matters to you that University of Louisville does well because it's the economic engine. But the truth is that if you did a Venn diagram of all research universities and all universities that are highly community engaged, we are one of less than 70 universities in the whole country that are high on research and community engagement. That's it. Does that make sense for you? In terms of the context, I just wanted to lay it out. Because that's important when we talk about how does IBM make a difference and why do we need IBM to make a difference.
Thank you, thank you.
So with that, Jonathan, he's so fascinating. You heard his background, but his job. Tell us what you do.
All right. Before I tell you
the
about
title, yes.
Okay. Before I tell you about my job, I do want to mention what you said about University of Louisville. So we did do the Venn diagram. One of the reasons there was a perchance meeting, but we were already in the process of looking where we could establish the partnership throughout the U.S. And so IBM Research did do the Venn diagram and a few other circles that went with that. And I will tell you that U of L came out in the top 3 with regard to community engagement, research and development, quality of classwork, quality of production. And then not only that, the students that graduate from University of Louisville, what is their propensity to have early career placement and then long-term career outcomes? And so the university is not only a catalyst within the university itself, but within the area and then throughout the US. So thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you.
All right. So. My kids think that I answer email and do phone calls for a living, so they're quite right about that.
Probably true for most people in this room.
Absolutely. So I am responsible for IBM Cloud for North America. I have the subject matter experts. I have the North America security for cloud. I have the 430-something products that we deliver via our cloud. And about 90, well, I think the last count was 103,000 clients, unique clients that run across the IBM infrastructure in the IBM cloud world. So that's my day job. So.
Well, I just thought it was interesting, and I wanted people to say, and we're very thankful you took the time to be here today, because that's, I bet you worry about this a little bit.
Just a wee bit, yes.
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to keep it broad, and then by the way, we will get to your questions. We'll leave the last 30 minutes or so for questions, but maybe we'll start broadly on 2 different topics. What is it that we in universities, it's not just us, but we have Ivy Tech here, we have so many incredible colleges and universities in our midst. What is it we should be teaching our students from your point of view?
That's a really great question. So give that some context. You've heard the phrase mentioned a few times today. I hope you've heard it mentioned. I've noticed it, that we are at the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution. And that's not just words that people are saying for buzz. You need to understand what that means historically, and you can easily look back and read Adam Smith or folks like that, where that, at the very beginning of the second industrial revolution, the first industrial revolution, the change that made to society. And the similar fears that people have, the individuals and politicians and business people and, quite honestly, educators all have, mirror almost exactly the same things that you would read from the 1770s to the 1860s during that first wave of the Industrial Revolution. And it's interesting to me when you read what those fears were and how they mirror ours today, what the outcomes were. So there was an advancement or displacement of jobs. There was a displacement of prior utilized skills. However, the outcome of that was a dramatic increase of opportunity for the population in general. I was just reading a couple weeks ago a census based in the House of Commons that in I believe it was the 1840s, over 60% of the British population, they quite literally used this phrase back then, excess population. And what that phrase meant is that they don't really have the skills that we're looking for. They're not nobility, they're not merchants, they have whatever job that we don't know, or maybe they don't have a job. And then post-industrial revolution, beginning around the 1870s, going all the way up into 1909, that population got down to 12%. And what that meant was the fears that people were going to lose their jobs, they weren't going to be skilled, they weren't going to... Instead, that meant far more jobs and more kinds of jobs became available to the population in general. It wasn't an elite revolution, it was a revolution which occurred for the common person, to use that phrase. And so I look at this revolution as an open opportunity for the next wave of work revolution and increase in work opportunity, not a destruction of work opportunity. So when we teach, right, that was a long way to say.
No, that's an important point to make.
Yeah, so ready? The robots are not coming for us. All right, please don't, that's not going to happen. What this means is that the person who heretofore has had difficulty describing what they want to do in life or didn't have skills, augmented intelligence, and the capability that computing will bring to the average job will make the average person, or above average, or even below average, more capable of being a full participant in the workforce with things that interest them. And you need to recognize that. We're going to augment not just the most elite, the knowledge worker, the executive. You're going to augment the person who wants to drive a cab, right? Wants to do art, wants to, or works in a factory, or even a person that has some skill deficiency, learning deficiency, and they're working in a factory and they're able to do more than they were ever able to before because we're augmenting their capabilities. That's what's happening today. And so what we need to educate people for is at multiple levels, and that's important, about how to utilize those available coming skill enhancers that they have. And then you have the other side of that, which is the broad brush of capabilities. In the last 5 years, educators and industry have talked a lot about soft skills. And we've said that in such a way because we in society, Western society in particular, have gone a little too far in over-specialization. In that the idea of a person who has knowledge across a broad domain doesn't have a value. Jack of all trades, master of none. And what we have found is that was a mistake. And what we actually we teach at IBM a thing we call T-shaped skills. We want you to have a very broad knowledge across a wide domain of capabilities, including soft skills, people skills, et cetera. We want you to know history. We want you to know things like that. But then we also want you to dive deep and begin to have deep domain expertise in areas that you have a propensity to. And that's not just technology, by the way. And so universities or educational institutions, including short-term education, need to teach people about the breadth that's available to them so that they know how the pieces fit together. And you don't have to be an expert in everything. You do need to have something that you focus on. And that can be where your focus in education is. Perhaps that's your concentration. But universities need to stop just looking to create specialists and really go back to, and I don't just mean liberal arts, but truly a liberal education across domains so that you then can put context to your specialization. And that's really important. So we do need technology, but we also need linguists. We need medical professionals. We need folks that understand mechanics and physics. The physical world is not going to disappear into the digital. All right, so one of the things that I really struggle with when I talk to some universities is that everything's going to be digital. Well, that's great, but I actually have to drive a real car. So who's going to design that, right? Metallurgy still has to be a real field. And so when universities create programs, they need to be thinking about 10 years out, what things will always exist? Well, land is going to exist, people are going to exist, physical world's going to exist. And then the technologies and or the human skills, how do those get intertwined in those needs? All right, so that's really important. And then from a technology standpoint, those are going to advance. There's certainly things, we're doing that with Skills Academy together, that are today and probably for the next 10 years going to be really important. But let's not forget that we're training human beings to live in a human world, and those skills of being a real human that interacts with other humans in that real world is absolutely of necessity. That's not.
I agree completely. The professor in me, if you don't mind, just 1 minute, because I want the people listening here to take something away. The I and T-shaped, I cannot remember who came up with it, so I'm a professor, so I have to confess attribution is to somebody else, not to me. But have you heard that concept? The little I, like if you wrote a little I shape, right? If you wrote the letter I, not capital I. That used to be the idea of what you needed to be an expert. So this is you, that little dot up there, and the depth. So you would pick a narrow area and learn more and more and more. Like when you become a PhD, what happens? You learn everything you can about a very narrow area. This T-shape that he's talking about, there's a scholar who's come up with it, who says you still need that depth, without question. That depth is incredibly important in an area, but it's a capital T, meaning that you have enough breadth. So you know a little bit in a business context, I would say, you need to understand marketing and finance and operations, et cetera. You still need expertise in one, but when you have that breadth, that way you can connect a lot of I-shaped people. Does that make sense? So IBM, I'm glad you use it. It came from somebody's work that it's I and T-shaped, but I wanted to put that in. I also wanted to explain to you that from our collaboration, I agree very much with what you said. What IBM is doing for us is depth, right, in 8 areas. And I just want to quickly mention it to you. Artificial intelligence, blockchain, cybersecurity, the cloud, design thinking, Internet of Things, quantum computing. I forgot to mention data science. Data science. So those are areas. So what you're telling me is you can have depth in any one of those, but it's also important to be anchored in the real world, have that breadth so you can say, how does it apply in this field or that?
Absolutely.
Would that be fair?
Absolutely. And those are things that are valuable when they're applied in the real world. And so you do need to understand the real world, and then how can these things, these particular technology types, make a difference in the real world. That's what it's all about.
Right. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit. Sure. Can you tell us about, earlier we were chatting about what you are doing in workforce transformation, trying to predict. I like your optimistic view of the world of humans being better, augmented by the AI or other technologies that are available. Are there any organizations you're working with, military, actually, how are they using this?
All right, so, well, let me talk about IBM first, what some of the things we're doing inside. And then we're taking the learning we've had inside IBM, and we're working with a number of partners or clients or public organizations, similarly, but within their domain or their thinking around it. So internal to IBM, we actually are using Watson AI in conjunction with workforce transformation. So we are looking at the skills of people in every job at IBM, and more importantly, looking at what are the things that they like. Where do they do well? Look, I'm a geek, right? I was an engineer and I've gotten the executive lobotomy, but I still am a geek. So my propensity is I want to focus. I'm going to get down. I'm going to go in the weeds. And I like to create things. So I get bored once I've made something. Well, IBM knows that. So every 18 to 24 months, they come with me and say, hey, you did pretty good at that. Let's give you a new challenge. And that is a thing where the company knows me and what I'm like and wants to create things where I can bring the greatest value to the company. AI did that. You know, it's not an HR person looking over my shoulder determining that. We're looking and saying, this is this person's propensity as a human being. These are the skills that they developed. Let's match opportunities for them. And then the outcomes that they produce. So AI can look at your real-time performance, not to say you did good, bad, or, you know, or worse. This is the things where you will be optimal for us. So we've taken that, and we've actually begun to work with a number of organizations around workforce planning. And that sounds like, how many people do we hire, how many people do we fire? But that's not really what we're talking about. It's I know in 10 years, I have to develop this kind of skill or individuals, or I'm going to need this number of executives, or this number of you know, knowledge workers or factory. So how do I take folks I have, and then those that I know I'm going to be bringing in, and create programs where the individual, I can take them and maximize their capabilities and assets and skills and give them experiences and education that will move their career along to match what I foresee I'm going to need 10, 12, 20 years from now. So without mentioning the particular branch, I am working with a senior military, how do I say it? So it's a colonel in the Pentagon who has been assigned to build out their plan for 30 years. And so when they have first, you know, candidate officers coming in, how do they build their, I don't want to say the type of, I can hint with language, but how do they build the officer corps and the particular type of skills that they're going to have 30 years from now? And how do they find the right people and put them in the right experiences at the beginning of their training, and then not weed them out, but bring people to maximize them throughout their military career, so that when they're 30 years in and it's time for them to be a general or a colonel or an admiral or whatever it is, they have prepared them for that. And they have people that are not only made the cut, but people that have fulfilled their maximum amount of personal fulfillment and fulfillment to the service corps. So that we are in the process of doing that right now, leveraging AI, deep science, and human skills across the board.
Those type of predictive analytics to try to say, what do you need? That's interesting. It's kind of like what Mary Gwen did without all of that AI, I guess, or maybe she used it to say 55,000 degrees and where you go forward. That's the enhancement of planning for a whole unit or for a city or a company. That's right. Interesting.
And so one of the things that we're working on, we're at the very beginning of this, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much, is we're looking at a superset of our veterans who have skills. And it may not be in data technology or data science, but we're looking for those that have historical past, that have personal propensities that might fit into one of the 8 categories, and how do we skill them up so that they have a second career in an advanced technology space? So that's something that we can do, not just for those that currently have a role and want a job switch, but those that are looking for, hey, I want to get into this is the future. So I can be a plumber today, and the world needs plumbers.
Absolutely.
Right? But I'm going to be 50 soon, and I want to do this next thing. You can skill up that person depending upon their propensities.
Yes, so this is a collaboration that we're working on. We're very, very proud of, so stay tuned. But this is important also to the University of Louisville, because about 7.5% of our students are military affiliated. The number of our students using military tuition, active duty, actually just active duty, is higher than the other 14 ACC universities combined. So we have a very interesting student group. So this partnership with IBM we're excited about, because we can bring this training to that one group, for example, and allow them to find a job that pays well and takes advantage of the fact that these are individuals who are motivated to serve. Absolutely. That's a great idea. So I want to turn the conversation a little bit. As you said, it was serendipity that our connection with IBM happened. David Jones Jr., I don't know if he's here today, but he made an introduction. I had a chance to go to a conference with him and listening to IBM present. It was fascinating because they talked about, there were many, many people. Your team was talking about how IBM was trying to bridge the global digital divide. So how they had gone into whole countries in Africa and tried to say, how do we skill them up? And I will confess, my first thing is, wow, if we can do this in Africa and change whole countries, why are we not doing something right here? Because knowing our population, why should Louisville, West Louisville, or wherever it may be, Why can't we benefit from it? So I'd like to ask you a few questions that I hope you don't think are too tough.
Please.
But I want to know, what is IBM doing to try to bring equity? Because I will frame this, like, I want to know, what are you intentionally doing? Because a lot of people have good feelings, they want to do the right thing,
Right.
but if you're not systematic about it, if you're not intentional about bringing in women, about bringing in people of color, it's not that people are purposely trying to keep them out, but it's benign neglect, so that digital divide will continue. So what are you doing at IBM?
Yeah, so let me quote a comment from earlier, one of the sessions earlier today. I actually put it up on my LinkedIn post, but there was a great statement that inclusion or inclusivity must mean inclusion, not just invitation. And I think that's one of the difficulties we've had, in that we want diversity, we want inclusivity, and we say, come, and yet we're putting an invite rather than purposefully creating inclusion. And so that does take intentionality, and it does take some effort. So IBM has begun a process that is, particularly in North America, it is global, but we've spent quite a bit of time in North America, beginning all the way down in the grade school, in serving lower income communities. I've got to be careful saying this, but education deserts, right? Where we have schools, publicly funded schools, but really they're not preparing them to a career path. You have the odd person out who does make their escape. I grew up in a community like that, by the way. I grew up in a very poor rural community, had less than a 20% graduation rate, or actually college matriculation rate. So I was one of those that escaped. So I have sensitivity to that. So we have created a thing called P-Tech schools that begins from elementary all the way to high school, where we are giving them technical education, we're giving assets, we are providing training for teachers, we're providing digital education where that's not possible within those schools, and we actually have sponsors in those schools all across America. And that effort has been going on now for about probably more than 5 years, and we've been expanding that more and more. So creating the opportunity for them to move into graduate and postgraduate opportunities.
Careers.
And then secondly, we have IBM University Programs, which is not simply a marketing thing. We partner with universities in order to help bridge a divide from a school system or a university that is training in a certain area but doesn't have access to certain capabilities, and to skill up or modernize the skills and curriculums that they have. But we go beyond that, and we are intentional about where we do that. So look, we are a research company. We have more patents than anybody else in the world for the last 20 plus years. We've got Ivy League schools. We've got research labs. I mean, we've got more PhDs on staff than any university in the world. That's not our lack. Our desire is to purposefully create inclusivity, where we're creating opportunities for those folks, not only through the university system, but then in partnership with our major clients. Where's the opportunity coming out of that university system? So a natural bridge to go from university to industry, we're helping create that through internship programs, through intern to hire, through being in while you're still in school, moving in and taking careers. And then we IBM, right? We have 4 different programs where we actually hire directly from university into IBM. And you might only be at IBM 2 years. Our hope is that you stay. But our propensity is you come to IBM for a couple of years, and then we call it a boomerang. We're going to see you again in about 10 years. It's all right. We like you. So those are intentional programs. IBM spends billions of dollars in those programs, and not simply as the nice charitable work. Those things benefit society, but they also benefit us and our clients.
100%.
And so we're really watering the garden, and fruit grows. And so we are doing that across the board.
That's great. I did want to I'm so glad you made that point, because this efforts at being more inclusive and asking whose voice is not at the table, who are we missing? It's not just we're doing out of the largesse of our hearts, because it actually is proven. Many of you know, if you've heard me before, you know I'll say, in God we trust, everybody else bring data, right? This is actually completely data-driven. The more diverse and inclusive your leadership teams, your decision makers, it stands to reason. As a market researcher myself, it's the degrees of freedom, right? If everybody is a clone of one another in their life experiences, in their education, you're not going to get a whole lot of new thinking, or you're not going to get the discomfort of ideas colliding,
Right.
which leads to innovation. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. Thank you. And we are very grateful for that. And I do know that for IBM, that was something that was attractive about us, that we have such a diverse
Absolutely.
Student base. So that's very...
And your staff.
Yeah,
You have a very
faculty and
diverse
staff.
yes,
We do,
yeah.
we do. One thing that I want to talk about is, I know we have questions. We'll get to that in a minute. Can you talk about a little more about the concern about job loss? And maybe I'll frame it this way. We have been talking, just so you all know, our partnership with IBM, and I love your global university partnerships. The whole idea was, it's not just for engineering. It's not just for students in business. So if you're going to get a philosophy major, if you're going to be a poet, it's digital humanities. One of our things is that everybody needs to understand what's going to happen. Like digital literacy is going to be something that everybody has to know.
Right.
So that's another area, right, for you as a focus
Absolutely.
in terms of preventing job loss.
Yeah, so I want to be a little cautious about how I say this. You don't need to be a programmer. Let me say that again. You don't need to be a programmer. You can be an art major, you can be a philosophy major, you can be a medical major, I mean, you can be a law major. And your legal practice may not be around technology, probably won't be. And yet, you do need to know about the things that are in our modern world in order to do that practice. So if you are looking for, I'm making this up, you want to be an auto claims lawyer, right? You want to be an ambulance chaser, that's all right. You better know about blockchain. You better know about blockchain, because every driver's license and every automobile and probably all the parts of that automobile are going to have a blockchain tag to them over time. And so the technology we're using are going to be part of something you need to know about. And so a breadth of knowledge is going to be necessary for the modern world. But you don't have to be a deep technologist, but you do have to have a level of domain knowledge. For example, I can tell you all about Swift programming and all of it, but I don't program my Apple phone, I just use it. So I don't need to know the fact of the A3 or now A7 chipset or whatnot, but I do know all about my apps and how to utilize those. And so that is something that we need to become comfortable in our modern world, that not only is technology closer to us, we need to be closer to the technology without having to be a domain expert in each area of that technology. We just have to have a broad knowledge of it.
So would you share a couple of examples? We've talked about it, and we are very excited about this, candidly. But what are some practical things through our partnership that beyond, obviously, for those of you who don't know, IBM has been incredible. All of our faculty, staff, and students, any of our faculty, staff, and students, as they take courses at UFL, these IBM skills are embedded. So a student can take our course and also get not just course credit, but a skill certification without paying anything extra for it. And so we're excited about the research opportunities, R1, high performance computing. But what are a couple of examples that maybe a student can experience in a classroom through AI and through IBM that, we talked about languages or anything.
Sure.
What are some things that can be done?
Well, I'll give you an example that I had. So I do not speak Mandarin, not at all. I sometimes barely speak English. But we had a particular customer who had some needs, and they had some deep data that they needed us to analyze. So we actually used Watson in collaboration with the client. And Watson actually didn't just do translation one-to-one to words, but it actually gave us the meaning and the intent of what they were going after. And then the data set that they provided allowed us in English, and actually also in French, to provide a domain of knowledge which allowed us to solve a business problem, which we could not had if we didn't have not only just a bilinguist, but somebody who understood the cultural divides across those. So imagine in that I'm trying to solve a problem within a Chinese-specific cultural divide that doesn't translate to English, not just the language, but culturally. But with AI, I can actually get context to the intent of those words, and then I can also look at what's behind those words and then help solve a problem for them. So and whether that be a business problem, a technological problem, or a physical problem, those are one of the things. The other I would say is if you're an architect, this is real world, right? So IBM makes a product today, it's resilient, that allows you as an architect to actually catalog and manage physical spaces. of all sorts. And then also with that to manage assets that are within that. So chairs, tables, desks, lights, computer monitors, et cetera, and then what is the way to optimize that for human beings? Well, okay, it's not going to put architects out of job to have the system say, we've analyzed this space and you have a 13% inefficiency in the space, not just in space utilization, but in the human interaction of that space, there's a tone analyzer of space, not just language. And so it will make recommendations that then the architect takes and becomes creative and makes a more useful space that can optimize the spend, but also the human utilization and comfort. How can I, as a human being, be happier at work simply because of the environment around me? And you would think that's mundane, but AI is applied here in architecture. And so that's real world today that you can procure. So those are some examples of how it enhances what we do.
So for some of the things we are thinking about that exist, and then we're brainstorming together what else we can do, is when you have questions, I know there's a university that's already done it, thanks to Watson, a TA, an advisor named Jill Watson, along with real people. So, and then students would send questions and they'd get answers, and guess what? Jill Watson got higher evaluations. So maybe she had less, the students did not know that it was AI that they were interacting with. Clearly, it's not for very super sophisticated questions, but the idea of what it may be, or an avatar that you could talk to learn a foreign language, who can trip you up by not just sticking to the questions, but understanding the context. So there's many, many applications beyond, it's enriching the classroom, enriching the work life, and hopefully becoming a better place to invest. We have a whole lot of questions, so I'd like to get to that, but I'm going to give you a question to think about while we answer these, okay?
Yes.
I want to know what being a pastor has informed you about AI and the future of work. I didn't tell him I would ask this, but I think it's beautiful, right? We bring the wholeness of ourselves to our work, and it informs how we look at the world. So I'd like you to be thinking about that a little bit. So here, please keep the questions coming. One, where do you see the role of social sciences in the fourth industrial revolution?
I love that question. So that's near and dear to my heart. I mentioned before, looking at the first industrial revolution, then the second industrial revolution, and there was the great fear in the marketplace then. And social sciences honestly weren't greatly developed back then.
That's right.
So everything about the world involves people. And so if we try to simply look at the world as commodities, there's this strange human resource in the middle, resources and human resources. And human resources are, in my opinion, the most valuable asset in the world. And it is where not only innovation, but where creation of happiness comes for other human beings. And so when we look at social sciences, they inform our technical or didactic decisions. And without them, we end up becoming technocrats, and there's no fun in that. And there's no good that really comes from that. So again, T-shaped skills must involve the social sciences. IBM employs philosophers. We employ psychologists. We employ medical doctors.
I know you have anthropologists.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So these types of skills are desperately needed in the real world. They are not separate from technological revolution. And AI is enhancing all of humanity and will help us discover more about social sciences. We have oh no, I can't talk about that, never mind. Go on, next question.
All right.
Sorry.
I agree with you, and that's why the collaboration with the university makes sense, because for us, we too believe we teach people not just how to make a living, but what is the good life? How do you live the good life? The perennial philosophy questions, informed questions, and that's why our colleagues that are working with IBM are across the spectrum of the university, not just business and engineering that you might think about. How long do you think this IBM partnership will need to last in order to create a sustainable environment for developing an AI workforce in Louisville?
Well, let me say this. I don't believe there's an AI workforce. I believe there's a workforce, and AI helps the workforces, right? So let me just say that. AI's here. It's never going away. Did you hear that? You don't get a choice. It's here. Genie's out of the bottle. Now, how can Louisville have a workforce that is the model for society, and how long will that relationship have to last? I really don't know the how long. I don't want it to go away, honestly. I'm not looking at a temporary thing here. That does actually speak to Louisville. Why Louisville? So university being centric to this model, but you also have some things in this region that don't exist elsewhere, and that was on purpose when we began having this conversation. This area, unlike many other places in the world, is not parochial in its response. So your mayor and a number of the civic organizations and the commercial businesses in the area, and not just one, all interact in collaboration with one another. They're purposeful about it. There's a great degree of communication, and there's not a great degree of selfishness. And that's really important, because it is in the bed of bringing skills together and looking at problems together that you're seeing innovation that will affect the entire workforce. And that was key in our decision making. It really was. We looked at a number of other areas that did have skills, had larger populations, and yet they were too parochial in the way they looked about it. And so when we look at how can Louisville or the broader Louisville area be a model of AI innovation, we'll put it that way, or augmented intelligence-driven workforce transformation, that is going to be about the workforce and the intelligence that goes together that is augmented artificially, all right? So with regard to how long, I mean, I'll see in a decade. I mean, we're looking for a long time.
Well, I will have an answer for you, which is that our goal is to become such incredible partners. It's always about how do we do this, so that IBM says, anything they want to do, they'll say, let's check out Louisville first, okay? So we are truly talking about this as an open-ended relationship, and I do think it has to be, I get the point of the question, though. It cannot be flash in the pan. We've tried it for 1 year.
No, it can't be. And look, we are our headquarters is just north of New York City. This collaboration, this purposeful effort is not something that is flash in the pan, or we think this is a nice thing. This is a purposeful look at where the workforce of the future is going. Historically, if you look at China and whatnot, people are going to cities because they are physical laborers needing to be physical with things. In a digital environment, the ability to work from anywhere and provide high value from anywhere at lower costs, because land is cheaper, people are more valuable where they're at instead of moving them to someplace. This is ideal.
Absolutely.
Absolutely ideal.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions here on which I might chime in if you don't mind. One is, how does the community at large learn to become digitally literate outside of post-secondary institutions? Not everyone can or wants to go to college. I could not agree more. So FYI, in our partnership, one of the things is that we've talked very clearly about developing some things for our own faculty, staff, and students, but also doing something for the community, where it might be, one of the things I'm really excited to launch is an overview of these 8 areas that anyone in the community can take, so that you at least know what that means, and then you can decide what your passion is about. Thank you very much. We'll make sure you sign up when we get it ready. But thank you, that's one of the things, and very much this whole push around veterans and others we're already collaborating on is meeting people where they are. It doesn't mean it's one size fits all, that the only solution is to go to college and do all of these. And we also, for those in the community, we're very proud. University of Louisville, I can brag because I had nothing to do with it. I've been here less than 2 years. They have developed a great program to give you credit for prior learning. Other universities try to do it. Ours, you can get over a year's credit for saying you've already acquired those life experiences, which should manage on that. What does AI mean for small businesses and their partnerships?
Oh, that's a great question.
I think so too.
I didn't expect
Usually
that.
AI, we think big business. But
So this is the beauty of AI. AI is delivered via the cloud. You don't need to spend $1 gazillion to have access to it, right? If you have services and you either plug in something that can help you innovate your business that's up in the cloud to help you make better decisions. You mentioned about students in certain universities using Watson in order to coach them. You can do that with your businesses, and I expect to see quite a few innovations where you have business coaches that are available, AI in the cloud, you've got a portal to the average business owner that's coaching them around there. Perfect example, Uber, right? Uber is powered by AI. I don't have to worry about how I'm going to get there, not just the maps, but what is the right driver for that type of customer, and how do I get them from here to there? The Uber driver doesn't have to figure all that out. AI is coming to them via their portable device. That's happening all over the cloud and helping them. My Uber driver yesterday told me, this has been so great for me. I didn't know if I would have a job, and here I can do this, and it tells me all the things I need to do, and it gets me the right choices. It knows how much I'm trying to make each day. So very small business there, but it's powered by AI, and she didn't know anything about AI, right? So it will help everybody at every strata within the community. You can have access to all these things without spending a ton of money. And then others will come around and innovate and make new solutions to offer to enhance your business or give you access to them.
And we'll have the students so that if you have those questions, they'll be working with you, ready to be employed. There's a question, and then I want to end with you, going back to you. It says, is the worry about optimality versus individuality? For instance, what if a person is optimally suited for something, but is more passionate about other things? This is one where I want to say, when we talk about optimal, a whole bunch of research will talk about, essentially, it'll try to marry. You're not optimally suited for something if you don't care about it at all. So the point is, it's what do you enjoy? What are the things that come naturally to you, you enjoy? And what are the things that if you put in the time and effort, you can be great at? So just know that, because to be great at something, you will have to put in the time. And if you fundamentally detest that activity, you're never going to put in that time. Does that make sense? So when we say optimal, just want you to know, it's not saying, maybe I'd be the greatest accountant in the world and I hate it. It won't say you should be an accountant, because if I don't have a passion for it, I can never be truly, truly great at it, because I don't want to invest that much. Am I fair in talking about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually we use the AI for individuals. I actually just did this for my whole direct report team. But we do it in general for IBM to develop people. We purposely look at things that they haven't done before or they're not good at. And we do make some deterministics. There is a human recommendation there, but AI makes recommendations. We do want to, we call it a stretch job. I hate when I get a stretch job, right? Because we are purposely putting you in an area where you will be uncomfortable, but it's going to develop not just the thing that you're not good at or don't like, it's going to develop the things around that. Absolutely. So look, if you want me to be an accountant, you're going to be miserable, and I'm going to be miserable. But I do need to know how to run a spreadsheet, and I need to look at a budget and whatnot. So they put me in a role about 8 years ago that absolutely I detested. And it was okay, because it developed skills that I needed in order to do the next thing. And so look, we are well-rounded individuals, or we should be, and so you need to experience things that are outside your comfort zone and experience that discomfort in order to get the rest of the strength you need around those. But by no means should a test say you need to do that. But a test may tell you, you should try this. And look, you're in charge of your own. We're humans. The robots are not coming to get us.
So it should not be, it's not deterministic. It is, so I just wanted to assure people, because when we try to tell students what paths also, it's like test it out and see. But I personally believe it has to match.
I do think, and I don't want to steal too much time, but I do think that in the next few years, we'll do a few things in collaboration, and not just U of L, but I think higher education in general, to help students go beyond to use military, right? So you had the ASVAB. You took the ASVAB, and it told you this is the thing you should do because you passed these tests, and that's the thing. And that was very blech, right? It was very structural. So I do see...
And also a blunt instrument.
Very blunt instrument. And I think we still kind of do that a bit. But using AI and gamification, we will give some students experiences, and that gamification will let them see the kind of things they want without really knowing they're producing that experience skill or test, and then bring back to them and give them those experiences and guide them toward coursework, and then guide them towards experiences that will round them out so that they are fulfilled. I do see that happening. We're not there yet, but I do see that happening.
So we have a minute or so.
Okay.
So tell me, how does...
People are precious. Truly, people are precious. So I'll give you an example, right? Background, my degree is in theology. Now, I was a neural network engineer, but my degree is in theology, right? So my experience in sociology and psychology and counseling and deep history and philosophy, right? I've got all that, so be well-rounded. But that experience that I still have today with people consistently informs me about the importance of developing the individual and helping them develop themselves. And that's really important, helping people on their journey of self-discovery, and then putting the information in front of them, but not only that, coming along and coaching them is desperately important. But at the end of the day, remember, we are not meat puppets, right? We are people, and we intrinsically have value, and we extrinsically produce value. And the goal is to optimize the value that I give so that I can optimize the value I get. And that's what I would have to say about that.
You remind me of Dalai Lama's quote, I believe, which says, you're supposed to use things and value people.
Right.
And we get into trouble when we value things and try to use people,
Amen.
right?
Amen.
I gotta bring it back up again. Yeah. So when we are thinking about talent and the future of work. So thank you all very much. We hope that this was helpful to you. Thank you, Jonathan. Very, very much appreciated.